The city was alive with noise, its marketplaces filled with shouts of merchants and the clinking of coins. But beneath the liveliness, there was a heaviness in the air, the weight of spiritual emptiness. Statues carved from stone and wood loomed at every corner, decorated with garlands and offerings. Incense burned before them, and priests with painted faces demanded worship in exchange for blessings. The rulers enforced it strictly. No man, woman, or child could refuse. To deny the idols was to deny the authority of the king himself, and such denial was punishable by humiliation, exile, or even death. Among this city's people lived a group of young men. They were not ordinary youths. Their hearts carried a secret light, a yearning for truth that could not be dimmed. Each of them, in the quiet of his own soul, had grown restless with the endless rituals of idol worship. They looked upon the statues, lifeless and silent, and asked themselves how such things could ever possess power. They saw the priests taking bribes, the leaders oppressing the weak, and the masses bowing blindly, and something within them refused to accept it. It was not easy to bear this secret. At times, they would catch each other's eyes in the crowd, recognizing a familiar unease, but they dared not speak it aloud. The walls had ears, and the king's spies were everywhere. But the truth has a way of pulling hearts together, and slowly, one by one, they began to gather in secret places, an empty courtyard at night, a shaded grove outside the city, or a hidden corner of the marketplace. And when they finally spoke, the words poured out like a flood that could no longer be held back. "There is no truth in these idols," one of them whispered. "They cannot hear, they cannot see, they cannot answer prayers." "Then who created us? Who created the heavens and the earth?" another asked, his voice trembling, not with doubt but with awe. "There must be one," a third replied, "one God, greater than all we see, beyond the grasp of men, one Lord who gives life and takes it." In those hushed gatherings of their faith began to take form. They did not yet know the depth of the path they were choosing, nor the trials that awaited them, but something in their hearts grew stronger each time they spoke. The more the city around them drowned in idolatry, the more certain they became that their souls belonged to the Lord of the heavens and the earth. But secrets cannot stay hidden forever. One day in the middle of the crowded marketplace, one of them spoke words too bold to be ignored. He declared his belief in the one true God, rejecting the idols publicly. Gasps filled the air. The priest turned in fury, and whispers spread like wildfire. These young men were defying the king's command, defying the religion of their forefathers. Soon they were dragged before the court, their youthful faces standing out amidst the stern faces of guards and judges. The king sat on his throne, robed in gold, his crown gleaming under the torchlight. His voice thundered across the hall as he questioned them. "Is it true that you reject the gods of your people? Do you insult the faith of your ancestors?" The youths exchanged glances. Their hearts pounded in their chests. This was the moment when they could choose safety by pretending, by nodding their heads and uttering empty words. But they had tasted truth, and truth is not something one can spit out once it enters the soul. One of them stepped forward. His voice was steady, though his body trembled. "Our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. We shall never call upon any god besides him, for to do so would be false. We will not bow to what your hands have carved. We will bow only to him who created all." The court erupted in shouts. Some mocked them. Others called for their execution. The king's face darkened with rage. Yet beneath the fury there was unease, for the courage in these young men's voices was unlike anything he had heard before. They stood not like rebels, but like men who carried a certainty greater than fear of death. The verdict was clear. They were traitors to the king, enemies of the state, and if they would not repent, their fate would be sealed. But before the guards could seize them, the youths managed to escape the palace. Their feet pounded against the earth as they fled the city, hearts racing, breath sharp with desperation and faith. Behind them, the noise of pursuit echoed faintly, but ahead of them stretched the wilderness, and within it a cave hidden among the rocks, waiting as if it had been destined for them since the beginning of time. The sun was sinking behind the hills when the young men reached the wilderness. Their sandals were torn, their clothes stained with dust, and their hearts beat with the weight of what they had left behind. Families, homes, familiar streets, all abandoned for the sake of their Lord. Yet as the city's walls disappeared into the horizon behind them, a strange calm washed over them. For the first time, they felt unchained. They were no longer prisoners of fear, no longer bound by the king's command or the people's mockery. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, perhaps hunger and death, but also freedom. The freedom to worship the one they had chosen above all else. As darkness thickened across the land, they spotted the mouth of a cave nestled high among jagged rocks. Its opening was narrow, shadowed, as though nature itself had concealed it from wandering eyes. They climbed the steep path toward it, their breath heavy, their limbs aching. When at last they entered, the air inside was cool, the stone walls damp with the scent of earth. It was empty, silent, forgotten by men. Yet to them, it felt like a sanctuary, a place untouched by the idols and corruption of the city. They settled on the cold floor, their backs pressed to the rock. One of them, still panting from the escape, whispered, "This is where we will make our stand. If Allah wills, He will protect us. If He wills otherwise, then at least we die with our faith intact." The others nodded, their faces lit faintly by the glow of the fading sunset that poured into the cave's entrance. They raised their hands in prayer, their voices soft yet firm, calling upon the Lord of the heavens and the earth. "Our Lord, grant us from yourself mercy and make for us in our affair right guidance." Their words echoed softly against the stone, weaving into the air like threads of sincerity. They did not know what awaited them. Would soldiers find them in the night? Would hunger and thirst consume them? Or would Allah answer in a way beyond their imagination? As they lay down to rest, exhaustion weighing on their bodies, a deep stillness settled over the cave. The stars rose high, and the moonlight stretched across the hills. But inside, their breathing grew slow, steady, and then faded into silence. Allah had accepted their prayer, not with immediate rescue, but with a miracle unlike any other. A slumber descended upon them, not like the fleeting rest of ordinary men, but a sleep that stretched beyond the measure of years. Their bodies lay still, their eyes closed, yet their hearts remained alive in the care of their Lord. Days turned to nights, nights into weeks, and weeks into years. Outside, kingdoms rose and fell. The tyrant who once ruled with arrogance faded into dust, his crown buried beneath the soil, his name forgotten by the generations that followed. New rulers came, some gentler, some harsher, each leaving their mark and then vanishing in the endless turning of time. Empires expanded, wars raged, and cities changed. But inside the cave, time was suspended, as though the world outside belonged to another realm. The sun passed over the cave day after day, but it never touched them directly. By Allah's will, its rays bent away at the right moment, illuminating the entrance but sparing their bodies from decay. Sometimes their forms shifted slightly, as if turned by unseen hands, so that their flesh would not waste away. At the cave's mouth, a faithful dog lay stretched out, guarding as though eternity itself had been placed upon its shoulders. Its head rested upon its paws, eyes half closed, yet its presence alone struck fear into those who might stumble too near. It was a silent sentinel, sharing in their miracle, sharing in their own destiny. Centuries passed in the blink of an eye for them. The world outside forgot their names, but their story lingered in whispers, half-remembered tales of young men who defied a king and vanished into the mountains. Some said they were dead, others claimed they were hidden, waiting for a time to return. Scholars argued, poets composed verses, mothers warned their children with a tale. But the truth lay only within the cave where the young men rested, untouched by decay, guarded by their Lord's mercy. Then came the day when Allah willed for them to awaken. It began as a stir in their limbs, a soft rustle in the stillness of the cave. Their eyelids fluttered, breaths deepened, hearts beat stronger. One of them sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, as though waking from a single night's sleep. The other stirred too, stretching stiff arms and blinking against the dim light that filtered in. To them, no centuries had passed, only moments. One yawned and said, "How long have we slept?" "Perhaps a day or part of a day," another replied, rubbing his beard that felt no longer than before. They looked at each other, bewildered but unalarmed. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, reminding them that time had indeed moved on, even if they could not measure it. One of them took out a few silver coins, their edges worn but still recognizable. "Go to the city," he told one of his companions, "and buy food, but be cautious. Hide your faith, for if they recognize us, we may be seized again." The chosen youth nodded, tucking the coins into his pouch and making his way down the rocky path. As he approached the city, he noticed changes that puzzled him. The walls seemed different, the streets unfamiliar, the faces of the people strange. He entered the marketplace, but instead of the idols and priests he once feared, he saw people speaking openly of the one God, invoking his name without fear. Approaching a baker's stall, he offered his silver coin in exchange for bread. The baker examined the coin with wide eyes, turning it over in disbelief. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Others gathered around, murmuring in confusion. The coin bore the mark of a king long dead, an empire long crumbled. To the townsfolk, it was as though a relic of history had been placed in their hands. Suspicion grew. "Who are you?" they asked. "Are you from another world, from another time?" The young man's heart pounded. He realized that something extraordinary had happened, something beyond his understanding. When he explained his story, that he and his companions had fled a tyrant king and had taken refuge in a cave only yesterday, the people gasped in awe. "Yesterday," they repeated. "It has been centuries since that king lived. Your tale is one known to us as legend, but you are living proof of it." Crowds gathered, and the news spread quickly. Scholars, leaders, and believers came to witness the miracle with their own eyes. The young man, overwhelmed, returned to the cave with them, leading them to his companions who awaited him. And there they stood, the young men once thought lost, alive after hundreds of years, their faces still youthful, their hearts still burning with faith. The people wept at the sight, glorifying Allah for his power and his mercy. Here was proof, undeniable and radiant, that resurrection is real, that life and death are in the hands of the Creator alone. The youth themselves looked upon the gathering with wonder, realizing at last the full scope of their miracle. What they had endured was not just a trial, but a sign for generations, a message that faith endures beyond kings and empires, and that those who trust in their Lord will never be abandoned. The centuries passed, and the city that once worshipped idols changed beyond recognition. Empires rose and fell, kings were buried in forgotten tombs, and generations of people walked the same streets, each leaving their mark before fading into history. Yet the cave remained untouched, a silent witness to the passage of time. The young men lay in their slumber, their breaths deep and steady, their faces calm, their bodies preserved as though no time had passed. Sunlight would stretch across the mouth of the cave in the morning and shift away in the evening, never striking them directly, a mercy that protected their rest. At times their bodies would turn from one side to another, their limbs moving without their awareness, for the Lord of the heavens was guarding them as he had promised. The people of the land told stories of them, though the details twisted over generations. Some said the youths had been devoured by wild beasts when they fled their city. Others whispered they had perished in the wilderness. A few still spoke of a miracle, that God himself had sheltered them, but their voices were small among the noise of myths. The cave became a place of mystery. Shepherds passed by it and pointed from a distance, but never entered. Hunters avoided it, saying strange stillness dwelled there. And so the young men remained hidden, their truth preserved until the time was ripe. One day, after what felt to them like only a single night of sleep, one of the youths stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he drew in a breath that trembled like someone waking from exhaustion. He rubbed his face, looked around, and was startled to see his companions still lying close by, as though nothing had changed. Slowly, one by one, the others awoke, stretching their limbs, rubbing their eyes, and exchanging glances heavy with confusion. "Praise be to Allah," one murmured. "He has granted us rest after the hardship of yesterday." Another sat upright and squinted at the cave's entrance. "How long did we sleep?" he asked. "A day or part of a day?" "It cannot have been more than that," replied another, shaking his head. "The king's men may still be searching for us. We must be cautious." Their stomachs grumbled with hunger. They had fled the city with no provisions, and their long rest had left their bodies yearning for food. After a brief discussion, they decided one of them would go to the marketplace with silver coins they had carried from the city. He was to buy some bread discreetly and return quickly. The others reminded him to be careful, to blend with the crowd, and to hide his faith. The chosen youth tucked the coins into his garment and made his way down the rocky path, stepping into the fields that stretched toward the city. Yet as he walked, something unsettled him. The air felt different, the landscape slightly unfamiliar. The trees were taller, the roads seemed altered, and the walls of the city, once etched clearly in his memory, now bore signs of age and change. Still, he pressed forward, assuming his mind was playing tricks after their long exhaustion. When he reached the marketplace, his confusion deepened. The stalls were not the same as before, the goods more abundant, the clothing of the people strange to his eyes. He listened to the chatter of merchants and realized their accents had shifted, their phrases not the same as what he remembered. He approached a baker's stall nervously and offered one of his coins in exchange for bread. The baker's eyes widened as he picked up the coin, turning it over in his hand. "Where did you find this?" the baker demanded. "This coin is ancient. It has not been in use for generations." The youth froze, his heart pounding. He looked around and saw others gathering, their eyes filled with curiosity. Whispers spread quickly. "He must have found treasure. Or perhaps he is not from here at all. Could it be one of the sleepers the old stories spoke of?" The youth panicked and tried to explain, but the words tumbled out clumsily. The people, sensing something extraordinary, led him to the city's leaders. Soon he was standing before a ruler, not the tyrant he had feared, but a man of faith who acknowledged the Lord of the heavens and the earth. The youth, astonished, realized everything had changed. The people no longer bowed to idols. They had embraced the truth of God. The ruler questioned him gently, asking who he was and where he came from. The youth recounted their flight from the tyrant king, their refuge in the cave, and their awakening that very morning. The court fell silent, and the ruler's eyes widened in awe. The old tales of the sleepers, long whispered among the people, had suddenly come alive before them. Here stood proof of God's power, a living sign that faith was never forgotten. The ruler and a crowd of townsfolk followed the youth back toward the cave. When his companions saw the multitude approaching, they were struck with fear, thinking the tyrant's men had come at last. But when they recognized the sincerity on the faces of the people and the reverence in the ruler's words, they understood. They had not slept for a night or a day. They had slept for centuries, preserved by God as a sign to the world. The people wept and glorified their Lord, realizing they were witnessing a miracle with their own eyes. The youth themselves felt their hearts swell with gratitude. They had fled their city in fear, thinking their mission small and fragile. Yet now their very existence was a message across time, that God protects his servants, that truth endures, and that faith is never lost. The ruler wished to honor them, to build a place of remembrance near the cave so future generations would never forget. The people debated, some suggesting a monument, others urging that a place of prayer be raised there. But above all, the cave itself became a sanctuary, a reminder of God's promise fulfilled. As for the youths, their purpose was complete. Their eyes grew heavy again, but this time with peace, not fear. They lay once more in the cave, their story sealed in history, their faith echoing through the ages as the people outside vowed to remember them. And so the tale of the people of the cave spread far and wide, carried in the hearts of believers as a sign of divine mercy and power.